Hi, my name is Douglas Westfall. I'm a nationally recognized historian. I write books on history, and my wife and I have produced 160 books in the last 30 years. She says I'll figure it out. And I brought business cards if anybody wants any. But I was in the computer industry starting in 1973. I got out of college, and I was supposed to be a teacher. My mom said I had to be a teacher. I'm now a fourth generation teacher. But anyway, there were no teaching jobs because the population had dipped, right? I mean, they're laying off teachers. And this happened just recently. Santa Ana alone has laid off over 500 teachers. Well, if you look at our population curve, it does this, okay? And every generation is a different bubble. I'm a baby boomer. There were 75 million of us, okay? And then the X-gens, our children, there was real low. And then the millennials were real high. So it's just a sine wave, goes all the way back through history. And the schools never prepare for that. It's every 80 years. I'm sorry, it's going to happen. But anyway, hi, come on in, have a seat. So anyway, I'm Doug Westfall. I got cards here if you need me. And we're going to talk about a company I ended up working for called Basic 4. That was its logo for the 4, and there's a reason for that. We'll get into that a little bit later. They started on Claudina Street in Anaheim with 2 little buildings, eventually went to 3. This is the manufacturing building. I'm standing over here at the field service building, and behind it they added a little building for the administration so the VPs could sit alone or whatever. But they started manufacturing their own equipment, most of it which was putting together other people's gear. We used the Hazeltine video. Okay, it was a nice little video thing. You can see the connector cable in the back. We used the Centronics printer. Okay, so we got to have a printer. We got to have an input thing. Howdy. And it came in a cabinet like this. It said Basic 4, but that's a Plessey 400 computer that they just took and plugged in. Okay, and up here is an IOMEC disk drive that you would pull out a cartridge so you could put in another cartridge because there's a fixed one in there, and you pull them out and you could put in a new program or you could do backups or whatever, right? And I brought one of the disks that came in there. This is 5 megabytes. What are you going to do with all that? 5? Well, I want you to know that I buy these for my students. They cost me $2. It's the smallest memory stick you can get. This is 100 megabytes. Okay, just keep it in perspective, people. But anyway, I went to a client out in Pasadena. He must have had 100 of those plastic cartridges with one of these in it all over the wall because he had so many clientele. I mean, really? Okay. So anyway, that was our system. Down here, there was a cage where you could plug in the different boards that you needed, an I/O board, a memory card, a disk interface card, whatever. That's what was down here. So everything was done by RS-232 cable, and we all had to plug in and hook up and interface and all of that. And this is a core memory board that we started with. That's 4 megabytes. Wow, what are you going to do with 4 megabytes? And you can have up to 4 in the rack. What are you going to do with all that, right? Now, core are little tiny ferrite beads, okay? They're about the diameter of pencil lead, and they have a hole in the middle of them. And we would hire women stitchers, sewers, that could sit there with a little needle and a copper thread and go through and thread them and then do the next one and then do the next one. You can get it all done. And it had 2 wires, and depending upon which wire did what, depending on which direction the magnetic field went on the little core bead. And each bead was a 1 or a 0. Okay? I mean, it's just what it is. And it's amazing the dang thing even worked. Now, the benefit to core, and I've said this before, you could be at a system at one customer's house, turn it down, pull out their boards, plug in your core boards, turn it on, bring in the tape or whatever they're using to load the operating system, power it down, take the core out, put it in your little box, put their stuff back, get them up and running, and you could go drive that to San Fernando, plug it in a system that didn't have a tape machine to load their system, and it would run. Core remembers forever. I mean, how cool is that? Because the little ferrite beads are just magnetized. You loaded it, it's magnetized, it does whatever you want. Did that a lot. Okay. Yes, San Fernando's down, but they don't have a tape machine working to load the system. What do you want to do? Go over to somebody, load it up, and drive out. It was that simple. Then we went to, wow, semiconductor memory. And semiconductor, unfortunately, would forget as soon as you turn the power off. Now, there's a difference between dynamic and static RAMs. Static RAMs could remember, but static RAMs burn about 5 times the electricity. You cook pizza over a static RAM board, okay? It's hot. But anyway, now you're looking at an 8K board. Wow, we've really moved up. Now, I have to admit, I had my first email address in 1975. Of course, it took a computer the size of that one there, the refrigerator one, to operate it. But I could now talk. I ran the Industrial Training Center, and I could talk to my students. I had students in 34 countries. And before that, I had to go into a little room and put it up and set it up and type in a teletype and have it run and then make a paper tape and then run the paper tape just to talk to the guy in Kalamazoo. It was crazy. So now I have email. Of course, we were running at 300 bits. And then after a year, we got it up to 900 bits. Wow, we're screaming now. And then I remember 1200. It was a big thing. Well, you could count the characters going across the screen. You know how they have a little circle when you're loading a program or what now? Back then, we would have a solid block for a cursor on the screen, and we would have it print periods across the screen as it loaded the program. We called those cursor droppings. Well, anyway, everything came in a box like this. Basic 4 was its logo. And the reason for the basic and the 4 was that computer, the Plessy computer, was the Plessy 400. So we used business basic software to run it. Dartmouth developed BASIC for students to teach them to program, because if you've ever programmed in Fortran, it's a nightmare, okay? You're dealing with little weird symbols and, up arrow and all that. I mean, it is not fun. And I've taught 5 programming languages in my time, and so I know. But BASIC was very easy because it used all English words. Begin, for, next, add number, print to this, print it to the printer. Wow, who knew? Then you had little parameters to go with it. BASIC means, beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. Now, what BASIC 4 did was they took it and created a business frame around it. They had sine, cosine, tangent. They had all kinds of mathematical functions. They could create arrays. They had the precision, that's the number of value beyond the decimal point, to 14. What can't you calculate? Okay, if you need a random number, you could pull time, and it would have time out to 14 digits. Right? So you have a totally random number. 1 second later, they're totally different. So, it was a very flexible system, and so that's what they were doing. Now, other systems used programming by paper tape. Aren't you impressed? Then came punched card. Wow, man, we're really moving. Now, you need to know that Hollerith developed the punch card in the late 1880s because it took 5 years to count the census back then. And so what he did was he created a punch card, and he had holes in it, and each one had a count. Every time you took a census from a house, you'd punch your holes. And he had a pool of mercury connected to a wire, and then he had sewing needles on a little rack, and he'd lower the sewing needles, and where they went through and connected, they would have a wire, and it ran the programming, and it would click the little counter. How cool is this guy? I like him. Anyway, IBM picked it up, but this size, if you've ever seen, I don't have one here, they're about that big, was the original size of the US dollar. That's all he did. He took a dollar, laid it down, drew a line around it, and created the Hollerith card. You got to appreciate that. Everybody said that in the 20s, when we went to the smaller ones we have today, that's what caused the depression, because everybody thought their money got smaller. I'm not sure that's it, but, come on. Oh, here, I'm sorry, I got it there. All right, so this is our standard basic 4 cabinet. The Plessy computer eventually advanced. We'll go into that. There's our card rack. Here's our drive. You could add 2 drives in if you wanted. So you had a dual drive system that had operations going. And the benefit to the basic 4 system, it was basic operating system software, the BOSS. Seriously, that's what we call it. And we had BOSS BB1, BOSS Business Basic 2, BOSS, depending on the level. And the software would come out and you would order the software you needed. We had probably 40 or 50 packages, retail, how to run a tire store, how to run a manufacturing operation, how to do a real estate sales. We had all these software packages that you could add onto your computer. And of course, by choice, whether you wanted it, we had a game pack. We had Star Trek. It was little characters. We had Tank. You gotta love Tank. It's 2 little character things here, and you move them back and forth. Each one guy has one hand, and you'd use the keyboard. I have these 3 keys, you have those 3 keys, and then you'd fire your little bullet in a period would go across the screen to try to blow up the other guy's tank. Come on. Anyway, everything was done by backup by reel-to-reel tape. We had a big tape machine sitting there for this. Eventually, we got down to a little cartridge this big, but that was like in the late 80s. But however, I lost it. There's BASIC. That's just one simple program. If you see a $sign, it means a string, which means the numbers are not numbers, they're letters. It's that simple. Okay. Then you see other characters in here that do that. But basically, it's here, go to 1000. Now, you could put in a remark, and it would mean nothing. It was just you putting in a note to say, this is what this hook does or something like that. And I used to read some of the engineering code that came out for the operating system. There was one that said, yeah, I got drunk and put a hook in here, but I forgot what it's for. Oh, well, yeah. Engineers are what there is. Eventually, we got up to the ADM Lear-Siegler terminal, and that's what that is. ADM meant the American Dream Machine. And it had 10 keypad with controls and a regular and a screen. And the Hazeltines were green screens with white letters. These were actually black screens with white letters. So it didn't have that weird effect when you got done programming. Why does everything look weird? I mean, it's just what it was. And eventually we started making our own. This is our Printronix printer. Okay, drum printer. Had the thing down the thing. It would make a lot of noise and run. And product support was part of field service, and I was in technical education part of field service. And when the guys in product support couldn't figure it out, they'd call me. The teacher knew everything, right? So I went in, I'm on the horn, this guy says, yeah, the system goes down at 10 o'clock every morning. You're kidding. If you check the power, put a tracker on it, make sure you're not getting spiked. Nope, it always happens about 10 o'clock. Okay, give me the layout of the room. Well, the computer's here, it's all there. We do have a Printronix printer on the far wall. I said, have you checked the power for that one? No. So one of our service guys went out to try to help him. And they're working on the system, and the office manager came out and he says, yeah, I got to go do my use. He went in the bathroom. He took a crap every morning at 10, and he turned on the light, and you could see it flick because it had a bad ballast, and it would take down the printer, which was connected to the system. So our computer took a dump. I mean it. What? Yeah, we had very strange calls. There was one in New York. It was on a 20-story building that had been built in the 20s. And the company, they were just running real estate. And no, there was insurance. And they were on the top floor. And they said, every morning at 9 o'clock, it just quits. I said, have you done the power tracking? Yeah, no, it's not that. Have you done? Yeah, okay. So I did some research, and the U.S. Navy on a far hill, because it's New York, you're near the ocean, did a sweep with a microwave every morning at 9 a.m. Well, it shouldn't affect the building. It's all steel concrete, right? It shouldn't be a problem. Well, the top floor was brick, so I had the city go out to inspect it. Took about a week. Guess what? There's no steel on the top floor. Remember the 2 guys fighting it out and he pushed him against a wall? You're 20 stories up, dude. Oh my God, They made him tear down the top floor. My fault. I'm sorry, but that's why the computer was going down. I have a million of these, so I won't go on. But I'm telling you, this is this is what you get. You get these weird calls. Why is it doing this? Well, anyway, we offered a dual system. This is the computer. This is so you had extra racks for more cards and stuff. And that was a tape machine. This is an extra disk drive. I don't know why it's not in the rack. And then this is a cabinet that you would store your 5 megabyte disks in. 5, 10, 15. Yeah, really. So there was a company in 1957 that started buying up old IBM unit record equipment. Punch cord. I mean, you're talking primitive here. I don't know why there's not a crank on the side of this thing. But anyway, they would buy up old equipment, refurbish it, and sell it overseas to, Indonesia or Philippines or whatever, because they don't have anything, right? But this is cheap because they bought it cheap and it's over there. And then they created a service company for it called Sorbus, which in Greek means service. That's just where it came from. And we always said Sorbus meant a wounded greyhound. It's a Sorbus. Okay. Anyway, so they started that. And they used a Genesis 1 computer and did other stuff, but they were just a packaging company. It was called Management Assistance. And they heard about this little company in Tustin called Basic 4, and they bought it outright. So now we're going to add on, these are the new CalComp drives. They have 3 platters in that container, and they're now 15 megabytes apiece. Wow, what are you going to do with all that? Anyway, you had a case that would slip over and you'd lock it, pull it out, and put in a new one, that kind of thing. And there were companies I've been to will have 10 of these dang things sitting on shelves, It is what it is. Then we got to 32-bit chips for memory. I mean, we're rolling now, man. We got a 32-bit processor. I mean, we're singing here. We're just screaming. And so the boards got more complex. It's just what it is. And running the training division, I'd have people come to corporate, but I had teachers in 26 countries, or 26 states and 34 countries. I've been all over the world doing this. My wife never got to go, but about 12, 15 years ago, was it? I took her and one of the grandkids, and I went back to do research for my history books, but we stopped in Ireland, stopped in Holland, and stayed with the guy that had worked for me 30 years before. Oh, you're coming? Please stay with us. Don't say, and they'd let us stay with him. It was cool. Anyway, so MAI got money, and they built this. This is the corporate building. It's still there in Tustin. They took off the glass front. I don't know why, but that's the corporate building. This is the manufacturing building next to it. And there were 4 buildings eventually. And we moved into this from our little Anaheim setup. And because of this glass sloping front, we all called it the Darth Vader building. Really. And that was marketing. If you walk in, it had a little waterfall, an atrium, and a little pool to make the customers feel good. I just think it makes you want to go to the bathroom. I don't. Anyway, we moved up, and this is one of our new systems. We had our own system processors now, and you could increase the CPU power by adding on, and you could make it a 16-bit system, a 32-bit system. I mean, you could actually grow the CPU to create more processing power, depending on how, General Motors was buying our stuff. Are you kidding? Buy a mainframe with from IBM with punch card. What are you kidding? And we're using Business Basic, which has the simplicity of Basic, but the complexity of a full business computer. And we have an ed center also for just customers would come in and they would bring their programmers to learn how to program different elements of different things. Now the programming I taught was technical. You got to learn to work with memory. You got to learn how to fix stuff and all of that. And I would always start them. I want you to write a program that will spell any word backwards. So you have to count the letters with a for next loop, then you have to build the cells, and then you have to reverse the order, and you take the last letter and put it in the first hole, and it spells the word backwards, right? So I'd always give them race car, which is a palindrome. It's spelled the same way forward and backwards. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, darn it, it didn't work. Oh, darn it. There'd be one guy in the back who capitalized the R of race car. You son of a bitch. You know, always got that one. But the point was, I wanted him to know that you, as a good programmer, it's not always your fault when it doesn't work. You have to look deeper into the thing, you know, that type of stuff. So anyway, this is a double. This is the CalComp drive. You can see the lid is open. You put it in, and then the CPU. And they were only about this high, so we got rid of the refrigerator look. And we took these the first time to the Rye Computer Show in the Netherlands. And I taught there, so, you know, they wanted me to come. And so we had a program running that would show all the software and everything, right? And I said, you do realize you're on different voltage, you got different systems there, you got other stuff. And I talked to the vice president of the division. I said, I'm going to make a fake tape. He said, what's a fake tape? I said, I'm going to make a tape that will play in the Netherlands, which they had PAL, which is the German version, right? That will play on a terminal the same program you want it to run in case it don't run. I'm a Boy Scout. You need a backup system. Come on, this is what this is for. And so I was there at the Rye Computer Show with my little fake tape, just in case it didn't work, you know? But I did a lot of video too, because when you're sending out a new printer into Europe, you don't want to send an instructor just to teach, it's taper that fell out, just to teach the program of how to work a printer. So I make a training tape, okay? I made like over 100 training tapes. And we would leave the audio and then stripe in Spanish and German and French because of the different countries. And then I had to take the master tape all the way to LA to have it converted into the different formats, because we had National Television Systems Committee, NTSC. Germany had PAL, which is phase alternation line. France and many other countries, all the Latin-based countries, uses French, which is SECOM. It's Sequential Synthetic Access Method, okay? But Germany had the best video ever, because what they did was they flipped every other line, you know, the 525 lines, they had 600 lines, and every other line would invert the signal. So if this one's too green, this one will be too red, and your eye blends it, and it looks perfect every time. So PAL, we called Peace at Last. And the American NTSC, we called Never Twice the Same Color. And SECOM, which was terrible, we called Some Color Other Than American. You get used to this stuff. I'm sorry, this is what it is. Now, this is a standard setup. There's your Printronix printer. Here is your add-on disk drive. Here's the disk drive sitting here to go in the cabinet. And you can see you could add cabinets. You could 2, 3, 4. You could make this thing huge. Okay? And each bin, each one, could handle up to, say, 100 terminals. So we could set you up to have 1,000 terminals. And we didn't use RS-232. We used direct video drive. You could go 600 feet from the system to how many buildings have you got? You know what I mean? You had a question, sir?
Approximately what year is this?
This right here came out, I would say, early 80s, 83, 84, something like that. By that time, Little Basic 4 in Tustin was clearing 25 million a year in just profit. How are we doing? Well, we sold business computers, not toys, not game. Well, we did have a game pack, but we sold business computers, and we could get them down to where you could buy a PC that would interface with our computer. So you'd have your PC, click the switch, and go talk to your computer. I mean, we had it so flexible, and they're much less expensive than these mainframes. But then as you needed more computing power, you could add on a section. You could add on another terminal. You could add, I mean, it was just so flexible a system. And it programs in BASIC. All you need is somebody that's a simple programmer to come in and fix that one that's not doing what you want it to do. And we had, you know, accounts receivable and payable. We had inventory control. You know, we had the basic stuff that came with it. But, you know, you're running real estate. That's a whole different ballgame, right? You have to have a real estate program. So we'd have all that stuff. It was really, really successful. This is showing you the size of the system that you could get. You could get it in colors, why I don't know. And these are the terminals that we actually started manufacturing in our own manufacturing. We didn't use other people's peripherals anymore. We were making our own. How cool is that? Oh, and the disk drives, we got up to 4 platters. Now it's 60 megabyte drives. Wow. Did I mention this is 100? Okay, just checking.
Question.
Yes, sir.
As these networked at that time, are you networking?
Oh, yeah, we had total networking. We had Ethernet.
56, right?
Yeah, we had, well, RS-232 gave way to Ethernet because we had high-speed terminals that would just blink on. You didn't see the little cursor going across anymore, which is really cool. And then we started doing this type of thing, which is a small, little tiny computer. You can see the floppy drive hole, 8 inches, of course, my God. But anyway, this was a small computer that would interface with a larger one if you bought the larger one later on. So you might be a one-man shop selling toys, you'd get this. And then as you grew, you could add terminals, or you could add another box to add for more computing power. One company we had cash registers that registered up to a big computer like the one I showed you. And you sold a pair of socks, and it said 1 pair of socks off the docket. And then it said, and the keyboard would light up so that you didn't have to think how to do it. And they had a 10 keypad and had a little printer, right? And there'd be 100 of these in one store. It's a Sears. I mean, oh my God, or Broadway. And they would all record what they sold for the day, and then at night, that system would tabulate the day's accounting and send the information to their master computer in LA, and it would say that, we sold 46 pairs of socks. Next shipment, we're going to need a box of socks. So it was totally automated inventory. Nobody had to count, nobody had to do anything. It was just automatically done. And then once a week, their service truck would show up and deliver socks and whatever else they needed. When you're dealing with retail, you're dealing with low margin but high volume. Okay, a company that's making $1 million a year gross is only making about 5% profit. Okay, so it's volume is what gets you. So volume means I got 1,000 different products I'm selling. Okay, I got different colors of socks. Whatever it is. That's what retail is all about. You got to understand retail. Anyway, this is one of our later systems that we got. And it had a little printer up there, but I don't know why. And we just kept growing. We just kept adding on, and just more system ability and more little possibilities for the end user, And here's the terminals we were making. You can see those are different. We actually had our own injection molding machine to make the case. It's all molded in one piece. Nope, I came back. So when we built that system in Tustin, you can see the rock on the wall. They would lay a form on the ground. This is our new manufacturing one. This is our 4th building. They would lay a form on the ground and drop rock on it and then pour concrete in it and let it dry and then just tilt it up. There you go. It has a rock surface on the outside. I don't know if I liked it, but that is what it was. But, this is one of our advertisements, the Basic 4 system. It's a setup showing the box and the guy telling you that's actually the Lear Siegler terminal. But, and there's a Printronix printer. Come on. What else do you need? Oh, we had a Centronics printer, which was bigger than this. And it was about that long, and it had that head that printed across and then slam back and then print across and then slam back, right? Because it's printing on 18-inch pin feed paper. And tech called, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. They said, yeah, the printer's squeaking. What do you mean squeaking? He held the phone out going, Rit! Every time it went back, Rit! And I said, okay, have you pulled out the gear train? Have you done the lube? He said, yeah, I did everything. I don't know what to do. Rit! Rit! I said, set the printer on the floor. Why? I said, just do it. So he and another guy, this thing's this long, picked it up, set it on the floor. I said, okay, run it. No squeak. I said, go move the table. Rit! You have to think outside the box, people, okay? I mean, the client called the service guy because of the squeaky machine, and it's his own table. You gotta love it. Okay, this is the admin, this is the Darth Vader building. It's still there. and so are these. And this is our first manufacturing building. This is our second. So they built this one, and they built this one, and then they added an engineering building and moved them out of manufacturing. So they had their own private conclave. You know how engineers are. And then they built a second manufacturing building because they were going so crazy building their own machines. The industry started to wane in the late 80s, and Basic 4 went down in the 90s. They just started losing money. The PCs started to erode the bottom of the market. Okay? And then so the big guys, IBM and Burroughs and all that, started to make computers the size of this floor, just to combat the high end of the market, and Basic 4 was getting squeezed in the middle like that. So I left in '88, and the thing just kept going down. I'm still in touch with people. They started laying off people on a Friday the 13th. Anyway, ever since then, and we didn't yesterday because a couple of the older ladies are sick. Every Friday the 13th, we get together just to, so many of them got laid off. Anyway, that's me with the beard, and this is in Canada, one of my first classes. I started at Basic 4. I'd already been with another company, and I was there 3 months, and the field service director called me over. I said, I don't want to do field service. I spend most of my time driving, He said, I know, I've done it too. But it says here on your resume that you've been a couple of years in field service, and now you're in quality control. I said, yeah, they like me in quality control because I know all the stupid designs that don't work in the field, right? So dumb. Anyway, he said, but you also have a degree in computer electronics. I said, oh, yeah. He said, but you have a degree in education? I said, yeah, I was going to be a school teacher. He said, would you be willing to set up our National Field Service Training Division? I'm 25. How long do you hold your breath on that one? Oh, God. So I did that. 4 years later, I got a little office now. I'm moving, right? I've taught in 26 states, and I got a crew here working for me, and the vice president of our division walks in. You know how when he comes in with a stack of paper and says, I need a report by noon? What the hell? You give it to a secretary, you get it done. He didn't. He walked in empty-handed, pulled out a chair, and sat down in my office. Oh, man, what did I do now? I'm in trouble. He says, well, I need to let you know that they've now embedded the international division with my department. You now have teachers in 34 countries. Get to it. That's Canada. That's the corporate in Europe. That's the Philippines. That's Germany. This guy, Manfred von Gienoth, there's a mouthful. He's bigger than I am, really. And after a couple of times there, we used to go to Frankfurt because that was our headquarters for a while. And I just ship everybody in, right? And these guys are all from different countries. Anyway, he stood up. He said, we need to tell you something. The Germans are very direct. Yeah, Manfred, what is it? We don't want you coming here anymore. Really? You don't like the material? Oh, no, we need this. This is very important. What's the problem? We don't get to travel. Next class was in Amsterdam. Now I'm down in Madrid. I'm over in Paris, down in Brussels. I mean, I've taught in 10 cities in Europe only because the Germans wanted to travel. And we had those offices, and it didn't cost me any more to ship them into different places. It's just they got to travel, right? And so you'll see these faces showing up in different places, France and all that. And, that's Holland. That's the Netherlands. He's French. I forgot. He's German, but I'm in Holland. Right? This is just what it was. Netherlands. Now, the fun part is, and I did go with my wife once when we did this to Holland. My ancestor came from Holland to the Dutch colony on Manhattan Island in 1642 with my last name. My family have been here for a long time. Well, he worked off an indenturement. The Dutch are cheap. No one's getting in for free, right? Okay. And he married the girl next door, and he lived with her family. And I have the map of the colony in 1650, and I know where their 1 acre is, and I want to know if I can have it back. Please. Anyway, he moved north finally, founded a church, and I have his grandson's Bible. It's 300 years old in Dutch. Yeah. My wife met me years ago, it's been together 40 years. She said, you can't have that sit on a shelf. So she bought me a little rosewood box with a window, and we put humidifiers in. It's there. But if you come to my home, you get to hold the 300-year-old Bible. That don't rattle you, nothing will. But anyway, so we went to this little town, Leiderdorp, where my ancestor had come from. So my wife and I took a little tour of Leiderdorp. How cool is that? Anyway, this is one of the instructional conferences. I know most of the people. That's Gene Keller. There's Janet Page. There's Barbara Hubert. I can go through them all. And we'd have them to the Customer Ed Center, which had an outdoor atrium and a waterfall. So we'd set them up on that and take pictures. But that's what that was, just to let you know. We did get people together. But anyway, the Basic 4 was originally the Basic 400 from the Plessy 400. They shortened it to 4. And now it's supposed to represent the 4 parts of a computer: the CPU, the input, output, the disk drive, and the memory. Basic 4. And that's why the logo. That's my logo. If you want to look me up, I left cards here for you. I have published books on history, and I have a lot more coming on computers. Yeah, pass them out if you want. Anyway, I want you to know something. This is important and nothing to do with this conference. This is San Diego County. This is Orange County. This is the Inland Empire. Because, Riverside goes all the way out. San Bernardino goes all the way out. This is Los Angeles. This we lovingly call SoCal. Not Southern California. You got to include Imperial. You got to include Kern County up here, all this area, right? We're just this little bubble, okay? So SoCal is important because we are the largest block of humanity in the Western Hemisphere. In that bubble are 21 million people. Ever been on a freeway? Okay. But here's the important part. Between San Diego and downtown LA, approximately 8 million people are working today. Okay? That is the largest job opportunity in all of Americas. Oh, thank you, sir. Do you understand? Now, what if Bill got fired, Sam got a promotion, and Charlie moved to Poughkeepsie? Now there's 10% open. 10% is 800,000 jobs available today. You want to know why people move here? Do you know why housing's expensive? Supply and demand. Last year, this bubble gained 1,000 people a day. Have you noticed all the apartments going up? Okay, that's why. But a growing, I taught business economics at college. Growing population is a growing economy. You need shoes. I need a hat. This guy, we all buy from each other, and it just grows. So it's a good thing. It just keeps the housing costs up. Okay? So, rule of thumb, inflation started about 1888, 1890. So I say use 1890 because it was flat before then. Okay? The Spanish peso, later the Mexican peso, were worth $1 right up until 1890. You could go into New York, throw a peso on the counter, and buy $1 worth of food. Okay? It was totally exchangeable. But then inflation started to go up, and there's this little wiggly line, right? Because it vibrates, right? We've seen inflation do it, but the slope is the same all the way back to 1890. So here's how you do it. To find out the cost differential, you subtract the 2 years, and you have 5 fingers, divide by 5. So let's take 1976 when I was with Basic 4. That's 50 years, divide by 5, that's 10. $1 then would take $10 today to buy the same thing. Gas was 45 cents. And then it went up to 50. What are we going to do, Do you understand? Minimum wage was $1.65. It just went up from $1.65 this year. I think it's what, $1.60, $1.90 or something stupid. But the point is that you can do this in your head and you know what $1 in 1920 is worth today. Okay? Now, for housing, it's different. If you look at the center of the country, North Dakota and Iowa and all that, it works for a house. If you move to the Rockies or you move to the Appalachia, it doubles. If you move to the Northeast or the Southwest, it triples. So a house here is that formula times 3. Now, most products, bread, whatever, they go up and down almost every year, right? Okay, hamburger's like $9 now. What? Where'd that come from? But anyway, okay, it does this, right? Housing, however, is a stairs. It stays flat for 5, 6, 7, then jumps. And then it does it again, okay? And that's why realtors try to buy houses. They just sit on it because it's going to double in 10 years at least, you know? So your best investment is the home you've got. It's that simple. One more thing. This is a population bubble of people. That's New York, but this one is 30% taller than this one. And that little dot right there is the center, which is where you are in Orange, California. Look at the size of the bubble of people that you are. That's our SoCal. Don't move to Nebraska. That's Nebraska. Or Kansas. I go to the Amelia Earhart festivals and give talks. I've published a dozen books on Earhart. And the thing is that Kansas has less people than Orange County. That's embarrassing. I'm sorry. But here we have in 3 counties and that little inland empire, we generate 6% of the entire U.S. income here. They need to be nicer to us, okay? Really. Because you figure with 50 states, each state should supply 2%. We generate over half California's income. I wish our governor were nicer to us. We're the big guy on the block. So what all I can ask you to do is please don't leave. Don't go to Wyoming. They have less than 1 million people. What are you going to do there? You know? I mean, it's seriously. Yeah, my favorite's Nebraska. You know what they do there? They watch corn grow. That's about it. But the whole thing is that you need to know where you are, and you're right there right now. So if you live within the SoCal bubble, you're in the golden spot. And everything you do, everything you help, I don't care if you're a retail clerk, I don't care if you're an actress, you have more impact on more people than anywhere else in the United States. You are helping more of the U.S. than any other human, just because you're here. So does my gardener. Do you understand? Because we all contribute to each other in some way or another. Don't leave. Don't leave. Please don't leave. Some of you have took my card, and I appreciate that. Just so you know, if you Google me, I have 85 listings. You know, it's a little embarrassing, but most of it's for donating historic materials back to archives and stuff. We donate everything. My wife and I have given back 10,000 historic photos, thousands of manuscripts, hundreds of art. It's just, people give them to us. We archive it appropriately and donate it to an archive. And they're happy because Grandpa's getting in a book, you know. Any questions on anything other than, you know? Sir.
What language were the courses that were taught in English taught you?
What?
You were leading teaching classes in Europe.
Yeah, I taught in English. Ich kann Deutsch gesprochen. They said my Spanish was more like Spanglish. You know, I know a few things. I can get around. One of the guys over there told me, he says, you need to be able to know 3 things in every language. Okay? What's your name, sweetie? 2 beers, please, and where's the bathroom? Questions, anyone? You know. But anyway, no, it's been a pleasure being with you people today. Thank you for sitting. And yeah, take my card. And you can all our books that my wife and I do are based on unpublished first-person accounts, letters, journals, diaries, memoirs, interviews of people who were actually there. I have a whole series going now called Young Americans of people who experienced the situation as a child and then wrote about it later in life. You know, I mean, I have that kind of material. Our first one was a young girl who's living in Ohio, and her older brother and her dad went to the California Gold Rush, 1849. Wow. So they came out here and they started a claim. They came back home with a sack of gold and said, we're going to California. But they said it's too dangerous to take the little children across the plains. There's Indians and, you know, bad guys and stuff. So the brother married the girl next door. Now there's 2 families. There's 15 people. They got on a ship and they went up a little steamboat, just like you see at Disneyland, and went up the Ohio River, ended up at Pittsburgh, took the train over to New Jersey, took a packet boat to New York. Now they're on a steamship and they're heading for Panama. There's no canal. They had to cross Panama on mules. Now, the little 3-year-old they figured was too young to ride a mule, so they strapped him to a chair and tied the chair to the side of the mule. Is this just before child safety laws went into effect? God. And they're going through swamps with alligators, and there's pirates, road pirates. I mean, it's just crazy what this story is. And this girl eventually grew up and became a teacher and wrote it all out. But they got to the other side of Panama, and the Spanish had built a fort there back in the 1500s. So they went to go look at the old fort. Unfortunately, they were still in 1853 when there were still pirates attacking that area. They would capture the pirates and hang them on the outside of the wall and leave them there. And now you only see your dead skeletons. Isn't that good for the young children to see? Yeah, sure. Anyway, they were there in the thing, and the captain ran up and said, "We got to get on our ship right now. Well, we're not supposed to leave for a few hours." No, we got to go now. There's a boat that just landed with diphtheria. Oh, we'll get on the boat now. Then they started up north, and they had a little kitchen, and it caught on fire. And now the whole front of the ship's flaming. And people would jump off because they'd rather drown than burn. 25 miles later, they got the fire out. Hello, yeah. And then they get to Mazatlan, and that volcano's coming out of the ground. They're watching a volcano. That's safer than crossing the plains. Anyway, they sailed into San Francisco, took the carriage up to the Gold Band, lived it out. She became a school teacher, and a friend of mine came down with some photos of the Gold Rush era. He said, "I have this manuscript from my great aunt. Do you want it?" It's a girl across Panama. Yeah, I want it. So that's a book we've got. But this is where I get my stuff. So it's all original material, you know. Guys, I've got a medic. He's 20 years old in the Army, and he's going on a date. It's his day off, and he's in a bus. And he's got short pants, a funny little hat, and that's when the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor, strafed the bus, and shot the guy next to him. You know the date's over, right? You're not doing Waikiki today. So they turned the bus around, got up to the hospital, and they said, "Okay, you go get in the ambulance. You stay at the hospital." He said, "I can't stay like this." So he came out, jumped on an ambulance, and sat on the guy riding shotgun all the way back to where he'd been shot at. He was there for about an hour. A bomb hit, got shrapnel in the face. He still had the scar. I interviewed this guy, knocked him flat on the ground. He's 20 years old and bleeding like a sieve. Sergeant comes, "Oh, get him up to a hospital." He said he leaned up on one arm. "Sarge, can you give me a minute? I'm working on a guy that's missing a foot." His foot, my scratch. That kid, he showed me, he had a Bronze Star for bravery. I went to his funeral in his 90s. He was so cool. I mean, come on. Where are you going to get a story like that? So that's what we do. We want the story of that kid in the field. Oh, he married a nurse, brought her home, had his baby. Howdy. Yeah, you missed me. Any questions, answers? Your hand. Good job.